You know that 50 years after the first Wounded Knee, Native activists returned to reclaim their story, and the world finally listened. In 1973, the American Indian movement returned to Wounded Knee, South Dakota, the same ground where hundreds were killed in 1890. This time they brought cameras, elders, and the truth. They occupied the space for 71 days, calling for the government to honor old treaties and stop the cycle of broken promises. It wasn't about weapons, it was about visibility. That moment re-sparked Native pride movements across the country. Wounded Knee became a reminder that honoring history means acknowledging pain and transforming that shit into progress. Follow me for more shit that...
Hi lovelies, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Belinda Verse or Belly Dirt Stranad. Don't forget to please subscribe to this channel, turn on notifications so that anytime I upload videos, you will be the first person to be notified. To my returning subscribers, to those people that share my videos, leave commentaries, and educate each and every one of us, you guys are the real MVP. So lovelies, I'm gonna be your today's host, and I have so many statistics to put up here, and we are gonna come out to talk about it. Alright lovelies, let's dive into today's video.
The 19 soldiers who were awarded the Medal of Honor for their actions during the Battle of Wounded Knee in 1890 will get to keep those medals. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth made that announcement on social media Thursday night. Hundreds of Native Americans, including women and children, were killed in the massacre on the Pine Ridge Reservation. That decision comes after a review of the awards last year by Hegseth's predecessor, Lloyd Austin.
Under my direction, we're making it clear without hesitation that the soldiers who fought in the Battle of Wounded Knee in 1890 will keep their medals. And we're making it clear that they deserve those medals. This decision is now final, and their place in our nation's history is no longer up for debate. We salute their memory, we honor their service, and we will never forget what they did.
In a statement issued this afternoon, Oglala Sioux Tribe President Frank Starr comes out said, in part, Secretary Hegseth's refusal is despicable, untruthful, and insulting to Great Sioux Nation. More than 300 unarmed Lakota men, women, and children were massacred at Wounded Knee. It was not a battle. It was revenge for America's only loss on what they consider their home soil.
Pete Hegseth says that the Wounded Knee soldiers will keep their Medal of Honor. Let's talk about the Wounded Knee massacre. It's December 29, 1890. The Lakota are at the Pine Ridge Reservation practicing the ghost dance, a spiritual movement to bring restoration to their lands, return of the buffalo, and freedom from oppression. The U.S. sees this as a threat and surrounds them with the 7th Cavalry. They open fire with rifles and cannons, and 250 men, women, and children are massacred, many of whom were unarmed. And the aftermath? 19 U.S. soldiers from this cavalry receive a Medal of Honor. But to the Lakota and many indigenous communities, Wounded Knee became a symbol of U.S. betrayal, connected to cultural destruction and genocide of an entire population. This is what Hugh McGinnis had to say, a member of the 7th Cavalry. The screams of mothers as machine gun bullets tore their bodies apart, the curses of the Indian warriors fighting machine guns and cannons with old muskets, knives, and tomahawks, being cut down in rows by demon-crazed white soldiers. Historian Carl Jacoby says only an administration intent on committing war crimes would stoop to calling Wounded Knee a battle, rather than what it truly was, a massacre. As well as Major General Nelson Miles commenting that the U.S. Army conduct at Wounded Knee was among the most brutal, cold-blooded massacres in American history. And so Pete Hegseth says that these soldiers who committed this massacre will be keeping their Medal of Honor. When a nation refuses to reckon with or even honor the sacredness of millions of Native American lives that were massacred, it creates the conditions for that violence to repeat itself.
So did you hear about Pete Hegseth's praise for the soldiers who carried out the infamous massacre of about 300 Native Americans at Wounded Knee in 1890?
We salute their memory, we honor their service.
Yeah, so a little context here. Soon after that massacre, 20 members of the 7th Cavalry were awarded Medals of Honor for their conduct that day. Conduct that included opening fire with machine guns on a Native American encampment filled with non-combatants, executing people who were wounded or trying to surrender, chasing down and killing women and children who had fled more than a mile from the attack site, and then dumping the hundreds of dead, including scores of women, children, and elderly, in a huge mass grave. One officer said of his men opening fire, "It seemed to me only a few seconds till there was not a living thing before us. Warriors, squaws, children, ponies, and dogs, for they were all mixed together." Another soldier remembered, quote, the screams of mothers as machine gun bullets tore their bodies apart. He called it a cold-blooded massacre. So the Army calling this atrocity the Battle of Wounded Knee and handing out all those medals was a way to cover up what actually happened. But a century later, in the early 1990s, Native Americans and their allies began to push the Army to revoke the Medals of Honor. The final decision had yet to be rendered when Pour Me Another Pete made this announcement.
Under my direction, we're making it clear without hesitation that the soldiers who fought in the Battle of Wounded Knee in 1890 will keep their medals. And we're making it clear that they deserve those medals.
Yeah, for all that honor.
This decision is now final, and their place in our nation's history is no longer up for debate.
True, but not in the way you think.
We salute their memory, we honor their service, and we will never forget what they did.
Also true, but not in a good way. Well, there you have it. This move fits right in with Hegseth's decision to rename 9 military bases for Confederate traitors, to delete Pentagon web pages about the Tuskegee Airmen and Navajo Code Talkers, and to purge books about racism and black history from West Point. Pete keeps saying he's restoring the warrior ethos to the U.S. military, but it's pretty clear he's all about the white ethos.
Former Secretary Lloyd Austin, for whatever reason, I think we know, he was more interested in being politically correct than historically correct, chose not to make a final decision. Such careless inaction has allowed for their distinguished recognition to remain in limbo until now. Under my direction, we're making it clear without hesitation that the soldiers who fought in the Battle of Wounded Knee in 1890 will keep their medals. And we're making it clear that they deserve those medals.
Okay, so just to be clear, the 19 soldiers that Hegseth is allowing to keep their Medal of Honors, they were part of a U.S. Army troop that slaughtered 300 Native American men, women, and children. Okay? If you're not familiar with it, it's called the Battle of Wounded Knee. The U.S. government was seizing control of the Lakota's people land. And, of course, why not? Because white people superior. Anyways, so much like many of the land seizures, the U.S. government came in and they were like, you gotta go. We will give you everything you need, but we're going to take control of your land, leaving them no choice in the matter. Well, in this case, the U.S. Army disarmed most of them and then massacred them. I guess it was easier than providing for 300 people. And then to make things more horrific and dehumanizing, they got dumped into a trench and then covered over with dirt, just to be forgotten by the same government that controls our daily lives. The ones who still continue these practices, just in different forms. Anyways, just thought you should know. That's who's getting to keep their Medal of Honors. As always, stay true, follow through, and remember to say thank you. And don't forget to hit that like and share button, and follow me if you like my stuff. Also, follow me on Instagram, linked in my bio. Thanks, guys.
It was my ancestors that got massacred by the United States government at Wounded Knee, and it's really weird living in a country that hands out medals for killing some of my family members. Like, this country has awarded people for killing some of my ancestors and my family members, and it's never stopped. Like, my dad was gunned down 33 bullets in his chest by the police. Like, colonization never stopped for us. So when Pete Hegseth comes in and says, no, we're honoring the men who killed American soldiers and slaughtered Lakota women, children, and men, we're honoring them, it's not that big of a surprise to me. This country has tried over and over again to rebrand itself as an immigrant country, as all these things. However, there's still people that hold on to that imperialist, colonization, manifest destiny legacy that America has. But it is weird living in a country that they killed some of my family members and gave them medals for doing it. It's weird. Lakota, it was my ancestors that got massacred by the United States government at Wounded Knee. And
I'm going to read something to you. Hegseth had announced last week in a video on social media that Wounded Knee soldiers will keep their Medal of Honor, part of a wider Trump administration move that indigenous leaders and historians on Tuesday called part of a cultural war against racial and ethnic minorities and women's rights. In 1890, an estimated 250 men, women, and children were unalived by U.S. soldiers on the Pine Ridge Reservation in South Dakota. Many as they fled the violence and well after orders to cease fire. Some estimates put the number of dead over 300, more than half women and children. These are the people that get to keep their military honors. And I ain't hear a peep on this app. I've seen one video so far. Just one. Beyonce wore a t-shirt and all hell broke loose on here. This is why I said I need to go take a break, because y'all will make people crash out. Because when it is a black woman that is the face of your criticism, y'all go all in. Y'all have no problems laying it all out. But when it's the face of your oppressor, you have nothing to say. I'm going to read.
Under my direction, we're making it clear without hesitation that the soldiers who fought in the Battle of Wounded Knee in 1890 will keep their medals. And we're making it clear that they deserve those medals. This decision is now final, and their place in our nation's history is no longer up for debate. We salute their memory, we honor their service, and we will never forget.
Hey there, everybody. That was Pete Hegseth, the so-called Secretary of War, formerly the Secretary of Defense, declaring that the soldiers from the Wounded Knee Massacre that were awarded the Medal of Honor are going to keep their medals because, according to Pete Hegseth, that those medals were well deserved and that those soldiers will never be forgotten. You know, it's taken me a couple of days to process this because he came out with that statement 2 days ago. As a veteran myself, as a Native American, Cheyenne and Arapaho, it's really hard to process the understanding that someone like Pete Hegseth could make, knowing that that was not a battle. That so-called battle, as he called it, which Native Americans referred to as nothing more than a massacre because that's what it was, consisted of between 200 and 300 Native Americans. 2/3 of them were women and children. Yeah, that's right. These soldiers who killed these Native Americans, according to Pete Hegseth, in which they earned it, they deserved it, they're going to keep their Medal of Honor medals, killed women and children. So keep in mind, this occurred on December 29th, 1890. Has anybody ever been in South Dakota during the dead middle of winter? Those Lakota people, those Native American men, women, and children were merely trying to survive wintertime at the time that their encampment was surrounded by, guess who? The 7th Cavalry. This occurred 14 years after the Battle of the Little Bighorn, July of 1876, in which Lakota, Cheyenne, Arapaho, Dakota destroyed the 7th Cavalry and General Custer. So who knows, maybe this was somewhat of a revenge party on the 7th Cavalry to make themselves feel good about going in the dead set of wintertime surrounding an encampment of mostly women and children and a lot of elder men. Very few soldiers, very few warriors were in that camp. But nonetheless, that 7th Cavalry was directed to do what they were well known to do at that time, which is to basically murder Native American men, women, and children. They chased them down in the snow, the women and children that ran off as far as a mile away, and they still killed them. I don't understand how someone like this so-called Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, could stand up there with a straight face and tell the American people that those soldiers are keeping their medals because they deserve them. If myself, as a veteran who served in Iraq during Operation Iraqi Freedom, if we were to go into an Iraqi camp and were to have killed people in the same manner that the 7th Cavalry killed the Lakota people at the Wounded Knee Massacre, I would be serving a life in prison for committing that war crime. But yet, Pete Hegseth is telling us that those same soldiers that committed those murders in the Wounded Knee Massacre deserve their Medal of Honor medals. It's a sad day for our country. It's a sad day the direction this country is taking, because it's become very abundantly clear what they are about. Not only are they trying to erase the negative history of the United States, starting with the Navajo Code Talkers, which they tried to take down, the Tuskegee Airmen, right? They're going in and they're trying to whitewash the Smithsonian museums in Washington, D.C., because they don't want a negative view of this country's past dark history to be shown to the world when they come in. But Native Americans, this is the importance of striving for true tribal sovereignty, of creating, building, maintaining our own museums, because we will not let the true history die out. We will not let people like Pete Hegseth decide and determine our history. The Lions can now read and write. The Lions now hold law degrees and are scholars. And we will write our own history. We will keep our past.
Pete Hegseth says that the soldier who carried out the Wounded Knee massacre will keep their medals of honor. Let's talk about what that means, not just as a historical fact, but as a message about how this country still defies honor. It's December 29th, 1890. The Lakota people, my ancestors, are gathered at Wounded Knee Creek on the Pie Range Reservation. They are cold, exhausted, and trying to survive under the crushing weight of U.S. control. They are practicing the Ghost Dance, a spiritual movement meant to restore balance. It's not an art of war, it's a prayer for a renewal. The dance was about the return of the buffalo, the return of their ancestors, and the end of oppression. But to the US government, even a prayer from indigenous people was seen as a threat. The 17th Cavalry surrounded them. They came armed with rifles, Hotchkiss guns, and a fear disguised as duty. And within hours, that fear turned into slaughter. When the gunfire stopped, more than 250 Lakota men, women, and children were dead. In fact, we are found frozen in their mothers' arms. Women were shot in the back as they ran, entire families wiped out. And for that, 90 US soldiers received the Medal of Honor, the highest military award in the United States, a medal meant to represent courage, valor, and sacrifice. But tell me, what courage does it take to aim a cannon at a camp full of unarmed people? What honor is there in bayoneting children or burying the dead in a mass trench? Even members of the US Army who were there said it was not a battle, it was a massacre. Hugh MC Guinness, who served with the 7th Cavalry, described it this way. The screams of mothers as machine gun bullets tore their bodies apart, the curses of the Indian warriors fighting with old muskets, knives, and tomahawks being cut down in rows by demon-crazy white soldiers. That is not a description of heroism, that is a confession of horror. Major General Nelson Miles, who investigated Wounded Knee, said the same. The conduct of U.S. Army that day was one of the most brutal, cold-blooded massacres in American history. And yet, here we are in 2025, hearing Pete Hegseth proudly announce that those medals will stay. See, he said under his direction, the soldiers who fought at Wounded Knee will keep their medals of honor, that they deserve them. Think about that. A nation that killed indigenous people, erased their languages, their lands, their spirituality, is still 135 years later defending the honor of that slaughter. What does that say about the values this country really stands on? We are told to move on. We are told it's history. But history doesn't stay buried when the rewards of that violence are still on display. When the land we lost still lines the pockets of oil companies. When the institutions built on our genocide still stand tall. When Pete Hegseth defends those medals, he is not just defending soldiers, he's defending a myth, the myth that Americans' expansion was noble, that colonization was destiny, that genocide was civilization. The same meant that justified talking the Black Hills, seizing our massacred sites, boarding schools conversation, sterilization programs, and forced removals. When I hear Hegseth say those soldiers deserve their medals, I don't hear patriotism, I hear continuity. The same continuity that runs from Wounded Kneel to police killings today, because colonization didn't stop, it just changed uniforms. When my dad was shot at 3 times by police, I saw that continuity firsthand. The same disregard for native and black life, the same permission to kill with impunity, the same medals of honor handed out in a different form, a paycheck, a pension, a headline saying officers clear of wrongdoing. So when I hear Pete Hegseth talk about honor, I think about how this country defies it. How it honors killers, not healers. How it praises dominance, not justice. The United States has always rewarded violence against indigenous people. Whether it's through land grants, military honors, or political power, every medal pinned on those men's chests was another burial shovel of our history. And here's what people don't realize. Wounded Knee wasn't just a single massacre. It was a message. He told every indigenous nation, you will obey or you will be erased. And for all over a century, that message has been reinforced through borders, through broken treaties, through poverty, through prisons, and through policy. That is why this medal controversy isn't just about the past, it's about the present moral state of America. Every time the government refuses to revoke those medals, it reaffirms that the system values conquest more than conscience. There have been bills introduced in Congress to rescind them. Native activists have protested for decades, survivors' descendants have testified, and still the medal stays. Because to take them back would mean admitting the truth. It would mean saying what we did was not bravery, it was murder. And America doesn't do that well. It's a country that prefers to rename its crimes. Slavery becomes labor, genocide becomes manifest destiny, massacres become battles. And yet, even as they try to reframe the story, our memories remain. The land remembers, the bones beneath Wounded Knee remember, the descendants remember. We remember how our own people were disarmed under the promise of peace and then massacred. We remember how their bodies were dumped into mass grave and the soldiers who did it were called heroes. We remember how their names were erased, their killers' names engraved in bronze. That is why it's called more than just a policy issue. It's a spiritual word or wound. It's word living in a country that celebrates the men who killed your ancestors, that gives medals for murderer and silence for survival. It's weird watching the descendants of colonizers debate whether genocide deserves recognition. It's weird being told to get over it, why its medals stays polished and the grave stays unmarked. But that is America, a country that builds monumental for conquerors and pipelines over burial grounds, a country that preaches freedom while practicing erasure. And the most painful part is that none of it surprises me anymore. When Pete Hegseth says he's keeping those medals in place, I don't even flinch, because I have learned that for this country, honor doesn't mean justice. It means power. It means domination. It means rewriting history unto oppressors becomes the hero. They call it the Battle of Wounded Knee, but a battle requires two sides with equal weapons, equal stakes, equal footing. This was a slaughter, a one-sided massacre. The Lakota fought with faith and desperation. The US fought with guns and greed, and that imbalance, that arrogance continues today. Whether it's militarized police in our neighborhoods, oil corporation invading in our water, or politicians using our trauma for talking points, it's the same playbook. Disarmed, dehumanize, destroyed, then decorate yourself with medals for doing it. You see, this is why so many indigenous people say colonization never ended. It just became more polite. It learned how to smile on TV, but the bullets, the laws, the mindset, they never change. Pete Hegseth's statement isn't just about 19 medals, it's about Americans' refusal to let go of its self-image as righteous. It admits that its foundation was built on blood, theft, and spiritual discretion. That refusal is what keeps racism alive. It's what keeps injustice cyclical. It's what keeps the descendant of the oppressed mourning while the descendant of the oppressors defend tradition. The Wounded Knee medals of honor have physically proved that America still haven't told itself the truth. They are not just medal, they are memory. They are confession disguised as pride. If this country were truly ready for recognition or reconciliation, those medals would be gone. But America doesn't reconcile, it rebrands. It rebrands genocide as expansion, it rebrands slavery as founding struggle, it rebrands justice as freedom. So when you see Pete Hegseth standing there saying those medals stand, understand that it's not about the past, it's about power, it's about those story who gets to be called truth. It's about whose pen gets erased and whose pride gets celebrated. And that is why indigenous people continue to speak, to dance, to sing, to survive, not for recognition, but for a remembrance. Because no medal can erase the cry of a mother at Wounded Knee. No ceremony can justify the killing of children. No flag can cover the truth. The truth is, those medals were earned in blood, not bravery. And the fact that America keeps them only proves that colonization never ended. It just put on a uniform and called itself honorable.
And if you watched up to this extent, don't forget to please leave me your own thought in the comment section of what you think of this video. And please do not forget that we do not support any form of bullying and harassment. We are just here for educational and informative purposes. So lovelies, why not just share your thought? Subscribe to this channel if you're yet to do that, and I will see you lovelies when I upload the next one.